If you take one single step out that door, don't you ever think of coming back. I don't care if you get on your knees and beg. I will never open it for you again. If I leave, who will prepare the Thanksgiving dinner? My cheek burned as if scorched by my mother-in-law's hand, but my heart was, strangely, calm. In that moment, I had a sudden realization. Every last dollar I had to buy, even a bag of groceries in this God-forsaken house, was money my own sick mother had secretly pressed into my hand. I looked at my belongings scattered on the floor. I didn't cry. I simply picked up my phone and, for 1 minute, did what I had to do. The next day, when the relatives descended upon the house like a tidal wave, the sight of my mother-in-law's face, drained of all color, was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Before we begin, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to say hello. Now, let's start the story. The late November air in Queens, New York, was a mix of dry, dusty grit and the faint, sweet smell of roasting chestnuts from a street vendor. Emily stood in front of a small closet, her stiff fingers fumbling through neatly folded underwear. Her phone screen was still lit, displaying the text message from her aunt. Mom collapsed at the market. It's a brain hemorrhage. They're in emergency surgery now. Get to Mount Sinai, fast. It was a short message. She was reading it for the 4th time. The underwear in the closet was organized by color, from lightest to darkest. It was a rule her mother-in-law had established on the very first day Emily married into this family. A woman's closet is a reflection of her soul, dear. A messy closet means a messy woman. Eleanor had said it with the condescending air of a duchess bestowing wisdom upon a simple country girl. Emily pulled out 2 tank tops. The straps of the white one were already pilling, but she had no other choice. In 5 years of marriage, she hadn't bought a single new piece of clothing for herself. It wasn't that she didn't have the money. It was because every single expense had to be audited by her mother-in-law. How much was this? Where do you think you're going dressed like that? Who are you trying to impress? She grew so tired of the questions that she simply stopped buying anything. Her suitcase was the same one she'd brought from her parents' home when she got married, a 20-inch, dark navy blue. The zipper was a little sticky. Emily knelt on the floor and began to pack. In the quiet room, the sound of her forcing the zipper shut was piercingly sharp. Underwear, pajamas, a spare pair of jeans, a pouch with her toiletries, she shoved them all in. Mom is in surgery. The thought jabbed at her temples every few seconds like a rusty nail. She wanted to cry, but though her eyes burned and ached, the tears were dammed up somewhere deep inside, refusing to come out. After 5 years of marriage, it seemed she had even forgotten how to cry. From the living room, the sound of the television drifted in. It was the trashy daytime soap opera her mother-in-law loved. The female lead was screeching at her husband, accusing him of an affair. Emily had listened to that sound for 5 years straight. The volume on that channel was always fixed at 23. Not too loud, not too soft, just loud enough to soak every corner of the house in the messy lives of other people. She stood up. Her knees creaked. 32. Her body was already warning her in various ways that she wasn't young anymore. The suitcase wheels rattled against the hardwood floor. As she walked to the entryway and reached for her coat hanging on the wall, the television in the living room abruptly went silent. And just where do you think you're going? Eleanor's voice shot out from the direction of the sofa. It wasn't a question. It was an interrogation. Emily was all too familiar with that tone, the slight upward inflection at the end of the sentence, the way she scanned you from head to toe like a cat inspecting a mouse that had invaded its territory, her displeasure palpable. Emily didn't turn around. She gripped the sleeve of her coat tightly, then let go. Eleanor, my mother has been hospitalized. She had a brain hemorrhage. I have to go to the hospital. She tried her best to keep her voice even. The formal tone that came from her throat was so perfectly polished, there was no room for criticism. For 5 years, she had perfected the art of hiding her anger and sorrow beneath a shell of politeness. A rustling sound came from the sofa. Eleanor was getting up. The stare boring into her back felt like 2 cold, heavy stones. A brain hemorrhage? There was a sneer in her voice. Isn't that one of those things where they have to lie in bed for a long time? What's going to change just because you go? Emily turned around. Her mother-in-law was dressed in a lavender silk lounge set, her hair tied up in a neat bun, revealing a smooth, elegant neckline. At 62, her skin was smoother than that of her 32-year-old daughter-in-law. Because she never lifted a finger to do housework, because she went for skin treatments twice a week, and because her daughter-in-law's mother sent $2,000 to this house every month under the guise of support. She's in surgery, Eleanor. She's in critical condition, Emily said again. She wasn't sure why she repeated it. Perhaps she hoped the weight of the word critical might finally register with her mother-in-law. Eleanor's brow furrowed slightly. It wasn't with worry, but with disgust. "Thanksgiving is in 2 days," her mother-in-law said. Emily stood there, stunned. "The turkey isn't even prepped, the stuffing isn't made, and I haven't even taken out the good silver." Eleanor walked towards Emily as she spoke. The thud of her slippers on the floor sounded like a relentless, oppressive beat. "If you go now, who's going to do all that?" "Eleanor, my mother might die." Emily heard her own voice. It was dry and hoarse, like 2 pieces of sandpaper rubbing against each other. Eleanor stopped. A strange expression crossed her face. It wasn't shock or sympathy. It was the fury of someone who had been insulted, as if Emily hadn't just said her mother might die, but that she refused to serve her. "What did you say?" "I'm just saying, my mother is I heard you." Eleanor's voice suddenly shot up, sharp and grating like nails on a chalkboard. "What does your mother's life or death have to do with me? You married into the Davis family. Thanksgiving is the most important day of the year. And you dare to run away at a time like this?" Emily's fingers trembled. She looked down and saw her fingertips were pale and bluish, as if frostbitten. "Eleanor, I'm not running away. So your mother is more important than our family traditions? You just want to embarrass the Davis family in front of all the relatives? Your Uncle Richard and Aunt Susan are coming. You want to show them we can't even put a proper Thanksgiving dinner on the table?" Spittle flew from Eleanor's mouth, landing on Emily's face. Emily didn't move. She didn't even blink. She just stood there listening, like a wooden plank nailed to the wall. "Are you showing off just because your mother sends a little money every month?" Eleanor's voice grew shriller, a vein throbbing on her forehead. "You think the Davis family would starve without that money? Your mother seems to enjoy buying people with her cash. I only allowed this marriage in the first place because I heard she had some money. And what's the result? 5 years and you haven't even produced a single child. And now you're going to abandon Thanksgiving dinner too?" A roaring filled Emily's ears. Not a single child. She had heard those words 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times. Every time, it felt like someone was grinding their heel into her stomach. She and Kevin had been married for 5 years, but they were childless. It wasn't Emily's problem. The doctor had said her body was perfectly normal. The problem was Kevin. Low sperm motility, medically termed asthenospermia. But Eleanor didn't know that fact. Kevin had forbidden her from telling. "Are you trying to disappoint my mother? You want to let her know her only son is practically sterile?" Kevin had asked, his tone cowardly and pathetic, as if he were the victim. And so, for the past 5 years, all the blame had fallen solely on Emily, a barren hen, trying to end the Davis family line. "You're useless." Each and every one of those words was a dull blade, slicing at her heart again and again, until it was shredded to ribbons. But never quite enough to kill her. "I'm not doing it on purpose, Eleanor." Emily realized she was speaking. Her voice was very small, as if coming from far away. "I just want to see my mom's face. Just for a few days. I already ordered all the Thanksgiving catering. It's arriving tomorrow." "Ordered?" Eleanor scoffed. "Do you think Thanksgiving is a takeout holiday? The turkey has to be roasted by hand. The pies have to be baked from scratch. You're going to serve our family legacy with store-bought food. Do you think your late father-in-law would rest in peace? This is disrespectful. It's a disgrace." It felt like a wad of cotton was lodged in Emily's throat. She wanted to open her mouth and say something, but no words came out. She wanted to say, "Your son is holed up in the bedroom playing video games right now, so why don't you call him disgraceful?" She wanted to say, "Is your idea of devotion just standing over me, dictating and criticizing while I cook from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m.? She wanted to say, "With the $2,000 my mother sends every month, how many spa treatments have you gotten? How many gold necklaces have you bought?" And yet, is a simple, I hope your mother will be okay, too much to ask. But she said nothing. It had been 5 years. She was used to silence. Silence was the safest option. Silence didn't create bigger problems. Silence was the only shield she had in this house. I'm going to get Kevin. He needs to see this for himself. Eleanor turned toward the master bedroom. Let him see just how immature his wife is. Emily stood in place, watching her mother-in-law's back disappear down the hallway. She lowered her head and looked at her suitcase. A little dust had settled on the dark navy fabric. She reached out to wipe it off, but her fingers were trembling too violently to do it properly. The bedroom door opened. Kevin walked out. He was in his pajamas, his hair a mess, and his eyes held the particular fatigue of someone who had been staring at a screen for too long. At 35, a small paunch was already starting to form, and his jawline was blurring. He was still holding his smartphone, a mobile game running on the screen. The moment Emily saw him, she felt an indescribable emotion surge through her chest. It wasn't anger or disappointment. Those feelings had long since worn away over the past 5 years. It was numbness, a bone-deep numbness. "What's going on?" Kevin asked. His voice was laced with the annoyance of a cat whose nap had been disturbed. "Your wife is trying to run away right before Thanksgiving." Eleanor stood behind her son, her shrill voice rising again. "Just listen to what she's saying. She says she has to go see her mother because she's in the hospital. Can't she go see her any other time? Does she have to pick now of all times?" Kevin's eyebrows twitched. He looked at Emily. There was no worry or concern in his eyes, only a shallow calculation. The look of a man assessing how much of an inconvenience this situation would be for him. "Your mom's in the hospital? What's wrong with her?" "A brain hemorrhage." "She's in surgery." Emily's voice was flat. She didn't want to explain anymore. She just wanted to get out of this house, away from these two people, and go to the hospital, to her mother. Kevin sighed. "Look," he began, his tone suggesting this was difficult but unavoidable. "Mom isn't trying to stop you just for the sake of it. It's Thanksgiving. You know how it is. All the relatives are coming. If you leave now, she can't handle it all by herself. My mother might be dying," Emily repeated for the 3rd time. Kevin blinked, as if it took him a moment to process the words. "Don't get so worked up. Not everyone with a brain hemorrhage dies. Modern medicine is amazing. I'm sure she'll be fine." His voice was almost cheerful. "Besides, there's nothing you can do even if you go now. Wouldn't it be better to go after the holiday?" "I'll go with you then." Emily stared at him. She looked at the man she had once believed she would spend her entire life with. His lips kept moving, spitting out words like, "Just be patient. It's only for a few days. Just finish the cooking and then go," but not a single syllable registered in her ears. There was only a buzzing, like a swarm of bees inside her head. "Are you deaf?" Eleanor's voice suddenly erupted. "Your husband is talking to you!" Emily snapped back to reality. She realized she was still standing in the same spot, her fingers crushing the suitcase handle, her nails digging into her palm. "I heard him," she said. Her voice was so calm it felt foreign even to her. "Then stop standing there like a statue and unpack your things." Eleanor took a step forward. "And then go to the kitchen and start prepping the vegetables. We have to start cooking first thing tomorrow morning." Emily didn't move. She just stood there, taking in her mother-in-law, her husband, and this space she had lived in for 5 years but had never once felt like a home. On the wall hung a photo of Kevin as a child, carefully framed in gold. Next to it was her in-law's wedding photo and a picture of her father-in-law, who had passed away 3 years ago, smiling gently. Next to that was a photo of Kevin holding his college diploma, with Eleanor standing proudly beside him. Her photo was not there, not a single one. Their wedding photo was stuffed deep inside a bedroom closet, buried between pillows and blankets, never having seen the light of day. "Did you not hear me?" Eleanor's voice pierced her eardrum like an awl. Emily moved. She pulled the suitcase closer to her body and reached again for her coat on the wall. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm going to the hospital." "You," Eleanor's face contorted in an instant. Emily saw the rage burning in her eyes, the ugliness erupting through the carefully maintained facade. Before she could react, a foot shot out and kicked her suitcase. Thwack! The suitcase tumbled to the floor, the lid popping open and spilling its contents everywhere. A white tank top landed near the entryway, its pilled fabric seeming especially prominent. "Are you insane?" Eleanor shrieked. "Do you have no respect for this family at all?" Emily bent down to pick up her clothes. The moment her fingers touched the fabric of the tank top, a hand flew out and struck her across the cheek. Crack! The sound was sharp and clean, like a dry twig snapping in two. Emily's head was thrown back by the force, and the side of her face slammed into the corner of the shoe cabinet. A violent pain shot out from her cheekbone, and her vision flashed white. She felt something warm trickle from the corner of her mouth. It was blood. She slowly stood up and touched her lip. Her fingertips came away stained red. The living room suddenly fell silent. Eleanor stood frozen in the position she had been in when she slapped her, a mixture of shock and horror on her face, not from the guilt of striking her daughter-in-law, but from the potential trouble the sight of blood might cause. Kevin stood at the end of the hallway, still holding his phone, bathed in its pale, flickering light. His face was a complete blank, no anger, no pity. He didn't even seem to consider coming closer. He just stood there like a bystander, waiting for the commotion to end. Emily looked at him. She remembered what Kevin had said on their wedding day, holding her hand. "I'll protect you." His voice had been so soft, so full of conviction. Back then, she had truly believed him. She had thought she had finally found someone she could lean on. But it had been 5 years. Through countless arguments, insults, and her mother-in-law's tirades, he always wore that same expression. "Mom's just getting old. Just put up with it. You know, that's just how she is. Just be the bigger person." It was always the same lines, like an automated answering machine. Emily's eyes began to sting, but still, no tears fell. She bent down and picked up the scattered clothes one by one, stuffing them back into the suitcase. The white tank top, the folded pajamas, she shoved them in haphazardly and zipped it shut. The zipper was still sticky, and it made an unpleasant grinding noise. You're still going?" Eleanor's voice trembled. It was laced with anxiety. "You dare to go?" Emily stood up. One side of her face throbbed as if it were on fire, and the blood from her mouth had trickled down her chin, staining the collar of her shirt. She didn't wipe it away. She didn't check her reflection in a mirror. She picked up her suitcase and turned toward the door. "If you walk out that door right now, don't ever think of coming back." Eleanor's voice stabbed into the back of her head, sharp enough to tear the air. "Do you hear me? Don't come back." Emily's hand grasped the doorknob. The metal felt cold. It wasn't even winter yet in Queens, but the knob felt like a block of ice. Suddenly, she thought of her mother. Her mom was 67 this year. Her hair was already half gray, her back slightly stooped. Every time she came to visit her daughter in the city, she had to take a 4-hour bus ride and then transfer subways 3 times. And every time, her hands were full of bags. Homemade jam, vegetables from her garden, a special cut of beef from the local butcher. "This is for your in-laws, this is for Kevin, and this is your favorite," her mother would always say. And then she would secretly slip an envelope into Emily's pocket. "Don't let your in-laws see. This is pocket money for you. A woman needs to have a little something of her own, you know?" Emily tried to refuse every time, but her mother's eyes were so full of earnest concern that she could never bring herself to say no. It was only later that she learned her mother had been sending Eleanor $2,000 every single month. "It's not easy being a daughter-in-law. If I help them out a bit, maybe they'll treat you better," her mother had said. But did they treat her better? Not even once. If anything, that money became an excuse for her mother-in-law to work her more brazenly, a reason to disrespect her with even greater conviction. "Your mother likes to buy people with her money." That's what Eleanor had just said. Emily's fingers squeezed the doorknob until her knuckles turned white. She opened the door. The November air rushed in, carrying the smell of roasting chestnuts and the distant scent of fried chicken. The motion sensor light in the hallway flickered on. The pale light starkly illuminated the bruise on her cheekbone and the blood on her chin. "You dare!" Eleanor's voice was cut off behind her. Emily didn't look back. She pulled her suitcase and stepped into the elevator. She pressed the button for the first floor. As the doors slowly slid shut, they erased Eleanor's distorted face from her view. The elevator began its descent. Emily leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her face hurt, her heart hurt more. But strangely, a sense of liberation she had never felt before washed over her. It was as if a string that had been pulled taut for 5 long years had finally snapped. The hallways of Mount Sinai Hospital always smelled of antiseptic. Emily sat on a plastic chair outside the intensive care unit. In her hand was a cup of vending machine coffee that had long gone cold. The paper cup had a generic convenience store logo, and the coffee was the color of dishwater. She'd taken maybe 3 sips. Now she was debating whether to just throw the rest away. The clock on the wall read 2:17 a.m. It was already past 9 p.m. when she had arrived at the hospital. From her in-laws' house, she had taken 2 subways and walked for 20 minutes. One of the wheels on her suitcase was broken, and it made a grating noise the entire way. Her mother was already out of surgery. The surgeon was a man in his 50s with gold-rimmed glasses and a habit of speaking with his arms crossed. He rattled off a series of medical terms: extensive intracranial hemorrhage, decompressive craniectomy, post-operative observation, possibility of a persistent vegetative state. Each word landed on top of her head like a lead weight. "The most important thing now is to wait," the doctor said finally. "The next 48 hours are critical." Her aunt was beside her, sobbing as if she couldn't breathe. Emily didn't cry. She just stared through the glass window of the ICU at the person lying there, tubes connected to every part of her body. Her mother's head was wrapped in bandages, her face was ashen, and her lips were cracked and dry. The face that used to smile and say, "My daughter is the most beautiful girl in the world," was now as lifeless as a faded black-and-white photograph. Emily stood there for a long time. She couldn't bring herself to leave until a nurse came and told her that visiting hours were over. Now, she was sitting in the hallway, clutching a cold cup of coffee and staring blankly at a health poster on the opposite wall. Next to a picture of a smiling elderly man were the words in large font, "Prevent strokes. Start with managing your blood pressure." She didn't know what her mother's blood pressure was. She didn't even know what her mother's health had been like recently. The last time she'd seen her was 3 months ago. Her mother had come to the city to drop off some food and left after just 2 hours. Eleanor had made it clear she was an inconvenience, and Kevin had grumbled that it was awkward having her there with nothing to talk about. "It's okay, dear. I'll come again soon," her mother had said. Watching her mother's back disappear into the subway entrance that day, Emily had felt a sharp pang of anxiety in her chest, but she hadn't run after her. She had just watched that small, thin back vanish into the crowd. Thinking back now, it felt like a premonition. Emily looked down at the paper cup in her hand. She had squeezed it so hard that it was crumpled and creased at the edges. She set the coffee aside and pulled her phone out of her pocket. 17 unread messages, 5 missed calls, all from her in-laws. Eleanor had left 8 voicemails, each one over a minute long. Emily knew what they said without even listening. It wouldn't be concern for her mother's condition. It would be a barrage of questions. Why aren't you back yet? What about Thanksgiving? What are we supposed to do with the ingredients? What am I going to tell the relatives when they get here? Kevin had sent 3 text messages. The first, "Did you make it to the hospital?" The second, "Mom is furious. You need to come back and apologize." The third, "Hey, is that catering stuff really coming tomorrow? I checked, and there's no delivery confirmation text." Emily stared at that third message for a long time. The scene at the house flashed through her mind. Her mother-in-law kicking her suitcase, slapping her face, blood trickling from her mouth. Kevin standing 15 feet away in the hallway, holding his phone, doing nothing. Is that catering stuff really coming tomorrow? That was what he was worried about. Emily let out a small, mirthless laugh. It was a strange sound, silent, with only the corners of her mouth turning up, but her eyes were devoid of light. She opened the shopping app on her phone. After a few seconds of loading, her order from 3 days ago appeared. Premium Thanksgiving dinner set. Total payment, $870. It included a pre-brined turkey, stuffing mix, gourmet gravy, seasonal fruits, traditional pies, a bottle of wine, and even a set of holiday-themed serving platters. Estimated delivery. The day before Thanksgiving, 9 a.m. Emily's finger hovered over the screen. The cancel order button was right there, bright red text on a white background. It stood out starkly. A voice in the back of her mind whispered, "Don't. You can't do this. This will cause a huge problem. The family dinner is a big deal. Eleanor will go insane. Kevin will resent you forever." But another voice answered back, "My mother is lying in a hospital bed. My mother might become a vegetable. My mother might die. And my mother-in-law is worried about who's going to cook a damn turkey. My husband is worried about whether a delivery will arrive on time." Did a single one of them ask, "How is your mother doing?" No, not one of them. Not a single word. Emily's finger pressed the screen. A confirmation message popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this order? Once canceled, the payment will be refunded to your account within 3 to 5 business days." She pressed confirm. The screen refreshed, and the order status changed from preparing for shipment to order canceled. Emily stared at those 2 words for 10 seconds. Then she opened her banking app. The credit card in her name was the household expense card. Kevin and Eleanor each had an authorized user card. All the household bills were paid from that account. Utilities, gas, internet, the apartment maintenance fees, all on autopay. Financial management had always been Emily's job. Not because she wanted it, but because Eleanor found it bothersome. "You're the woman of the house, so naturally, you should take care of these things," her mother-in-law had said. So the card was issued in Emily's name, and the monthly statements were sent to her phone. But who spent the money? Emily didn't buy clothes, didn't go to the salon, didn't meet friends. Her personal spending was less than $50 a month, mostly for small necessities or fruit. Eleanor went to the salon twice a week, charging $200 each time. Kevin, under the guise of entertaining clients, would frequently charge $500 or $600 for drinks. The real thing keeping this household afloat was the $2,000 her mother sent every month. And now, that mother was lying in the ICU, hovering between life and death. Emily navigated to the card management menu. She found the Manage Authorized Users tab. Kevin's card, ending in 1897. Eleanor's card, ending in 2045. She pressed the Report Lost, Stolen, and Deactivate button. The system asked again, "Are you sure you want to deactivate this card? Once deactivated, all transactions will be declined." She pressed Confirm. Both cards were now deactivated. Next, she went into the auto payment settings for the electric bill, the gas bill, and the internet bill, and canceled them one by one. Each cancellation prompted a confirmation message. She pressed Confirm for every single one. Her finger was steady, her breathing calm, as if she were handling a perfectly routine task. Finally, she opened their family group chat. The chat name was Our Family. 3 members: Emily, Kevin, Eleanor. The profile picture was a family photo taken 3 years ago, when her father-in-law was still alive. The 5 of them stood in a row, smiling, but the smiles were stiff, like taxidermy. Emily typed a message. "Thanksgiving catering has been canceled. The credit cards and all automatic bill payments have also been stopped. Since you value your family traditions so much, you can start showing your devotion with your son's money from now on. Send." Then, she switched her phone to silent mode and shoved it into her pocket. At the end of the hall, a nurse pushed a cart by. The sound of the wheels echoed in the empty corridor. The smell of antiseptic seemed to grow stronger. Emily leaned back against the chair and closed her eyes. Her face was throbbing. A scab was forming on the cut by her lip, making the skin feel tight. But it didn't matter. She just wanted to rest for a moment. Tomorrow, she had to discuss the treatment plan with the doctor. She had to contact her mother's workplace to arrange for medical leave. She had to go to her mother's apartment to find her insurance card and other documents. There was a mountain of things to do. But at least she didn't have to think about cooking that goddamn Thanksgiving dinner anymore. On Thanksgiving morning, a light drizzle fell over Queens. Eleanor had been on edge since 4 a.m. She couldn't sleep, checking her phone every 30 minutes. But the shopping app screen displayed only a single line of gray text. "Your order has been canceled." She couldn't believe it. It had to be a system error, she thought. She called the customer service center. After 20 minutes of navigating an automated voice menu, she finally connected with an agent. "Ma'am, the order placed by Emily Davis was officially canceled on November 21st at 11:47 p.m. The refund is being processed to her account. Is there anything else I can help you with?" The agent's voice was polite and robotic. Eleanor hung up the phone, her hands shaking. "She really did it," she muttered. "That crazy bitch. How could she? How could she do this to me?" Kevin emerged from the bedroom, dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept well either. Emily's last message had been eating away at his nerves like a ticking time bomb. "Mom, what do we do?" he asked, his voice filled with panic. He looked like a child who had done something wrong and was waiting for his mother's punishment. Eleanor whipped her head around to glare at her son. "What do we do? You're asking me? You can't even control your own wife, and now you're asking me what to do?" Kevin flinched. "I tried calling her. She's not picking up. Then keep calling until she does. And when she answers, you tell her to reinstate that order immediately, right now. But the agent said it's already been canceled and refunded. Then tell her to order it again." Eleanor's scream tore through the living room. "It's 8 o'clock. The relatives will be here by 9. What are we going to serve them? Should I just stand at the door empty-handed and bow and say, 'I'm sorry'?" Kevin lowered his head, swiping aimlessly at his phone screen. He opened a food delivery app, trying to find some last-minute Thanksgiving catering. But it was a holiday. Most places were closed. The few that were open showed an estimated delivery time of 2 p.m. 2 p.m., he mumbled. "That's so late." "Late? If it's late, then go out and buy it. Go to the supermarket and buy it. Go to a market, anywhere." Eleanor grabbed a throw pillow from the sofa and hurled it at him. "Are you a corpse? Why are you just standing there?" The pillow hit Kevin in the shoulder, and he stumbled. His face turned beet red with a mixture of shame and anger. "The supermarkets aren't even open yet. I have to wait until they open. Besides, I have a tea time with a client today." Eleanor froze. The look in her eyes as she stared at her son could have started a fire. "What did you say?" Realizing his mistake, Kevin quickly backtracked. "No, I can cancel it. I'll cancel it right now." Before Eleanor could unleash another tirade, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. The sound cut sharply through the quiet living room. Eleanor and Kevin looked at each other. The same terror was reflected in both their eyes. The doorbell rang again. Ding dong, who is it?" Kevin's voice trembled. Eleanor took a deep breath, smoothing her hair and clothes. She erased the demonic expression from her face and put on the mask of a benevolent matriarch, curving her lips into a smile and softening her eyes. She walked to the front door and opened it. 3 people stood outside. In the front was a man in his late 70s, dressed in a sharp tweed blazer. His hair was white, and the wrinkles on his face were as deep as if they'd been carved with a knife. This was the patriarch of the Davis family, Uncle Richard. He was the most senior and respected member of the family, and his word was law. Behind him stood his wife and their eldest son. "Richard!" Eleanor chirped, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You're here already. Welcome, welcome. Please, come in." Uncle Richard entered without changing his expression. His gaze swept across the living room, as sharp as a razor blade. The room was empty. There was no dining table set, no smell of cooking food, no pies, no decorations. There wasn't even a tray of simple refreshments for the guests. "Where is the dinner table?" His voice was low and commanding. Eleanor's smile froze on her face as if it had been glued there. "Oh, well, Richard, we're just getting it ready." "Getting it ready?" Uncle Richard's eyebrow twitched. "Dinner is at 10. It's 8:20 now. I asked you where the table is." Eleanor's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her mind went completely blank. She needed an excuse, but her brain felt like it had shut down. She just stood there, gaping like a fish out of water. "Uncle Richard," Kevin scurried out from the living room, trying to salvage the situation. "It's, my wife. Her mother is in the hospital, so she had to go to her parents'. She's usually in charge of the food, so?" Uncle Richard cut him off. "If she's not here, do you not have hands? Do you not have feet? Is she the only person in this house?" Kevin's face flushed a deep porcine red. We were just... I'm asking you." Uncle Richard took a step forward, cornering Kevin. "Where is the food for our family dinner?" It was canceled. Emily. She canceled it." Uncle Richard's eyes grew cold as ice. He slowly turned his head to look at Eleanor. "What kind of lesson have you been teaching your daughter-in-law?" Eleanor's face turned as white as a sheet. "Richard, it's that Emily. I don't want to hear your excuses." Uncle Richard's voice dropped like a cold stone. "This dinner is about honoring our family. It's the one day a year we all come together. And this is the state of the head of the Davis family household? This is a disgrace." Eleanor's lips trembled. She wanted to blame Emily, but under Uncle Richard's steely gaze, she couldn't even move her mouth. "Richard, and another thing," Uncle Richard continued. "Why is this house so dark? Why are the lights off?" Eleanor paused. She reached out and flipped the wall switch. Click. Nothing happened. She flipped it again. Click. Still dark. "What are you doing?" Irritation began to creep into Uncle Richard's voice. Eleanor's heart plummeted. She ran to the kitchen and pulled open the refrigerator door. The light inside was off. There was no humming sound from the motor. Ice in the freezer was melting, dripping water onto the floor. She checked the television, the microwave, the air conditioner. All of them were dead. It was a power outage. No, not just an outage. The power had been cut off. "Mom!" Kevin's frantic voice came from the living room. "It was Emily. That woman canceled the auto payment for the electric bill. It was cut off for non-payment." Eleanor stood in the middle of the kitchen, a cold chill running down her spine. The full picture was finally coming into focus, her obedient, quiet daughter-in-law, the free housekeeper who did everything she was told, the meek woman who didn't make a peep even when she was slapped. She had finally fought back, and she had done it at the most critical moment, in the most brutal way possible. "Eleanor." Uncle Richard's roar thundered from the other room. "Get in here!" Eleanor's legs felt like jelly. She grabbed the refrigerator door for support and staggered back into the living room. Her face was ashen, her lips drained of all color. Uncle Richard was standing in the middle of the living room, and behind him, her other brother-in-law, his wife, and a few more distant relatives had arrived. They were all dressed in their holiday best, their faces expectant. But now, that expectation was turning into contempt and ridicule. "Is this the Davis family Thanksgiving?" Uncle Richard asked, his voice like ice, gesturing to the empty room. "No table, no food, and the power is out. Richard, please, let me explain." "Explain?" Uncle Richard cut her off. "What is there to explain? That your daughter-in-law decided to screw you over? Then let me ask you this. What did you do to make her so desperate? How must you have treated her for things to come to this?" Eleanor's face twisted in a grimace. She wanted to scream, "She's crazy!" But the words got stuck in her throat. Uncle Richard's gaze was too sharp. His clouded, elderly eyes seemed to see through every lie. "That's enough." Uncle Richard turned to the other relatives. "Today's dinner is canceled. Everyone, please go home." "Just leave like this?" someone asked. "What else would you have us do?" Uncle Richard retorted coldly. "Offer a prayer to the empty air?" Eleanor's face burned with humiliation. It felt like an invisible hand had just slapped her 100 times harder than she had ever slapped Emily. "Uncle Richard, I'll go buy something." Kevin pushed through the crowd, shouting desperately. "I'll go to the store right now," Uncle Richard snorted. "And what will you buy it with?" "A maxed-out credit card?" Kevin froze. "Did you think I didn't know?" Uncle Richard's voice grew even lower. "Your salary is $3,000 a month, but you have $50,000 in credit card debt. Your mother's spa treatments, your bar tabs, even the maintenance on this apartment, it's all been paid for with your mother-in-law's money, hasn't it? And now that your wife's mother is lying in a hospital bed and the money has been cut off, you don't even have enough cash to buy a Thanksgiving turkey, do you?" Kevin's face cycled through shades of red and purple. He had never dreamed that Uncle Richard knew the details of his financial situation so intimately. The pathetic reality he had tried so hard to hide, the incompetence he refused to admit, was now laid bare for everyone to see. Enough. Uncle Richard held up a hand. "I will inform the rest of the family about what happened today. From now on, I will be in charge of our family gatherings. You two are no longer welcome." With that, the old man turned and walked out the front door without a backward glance. The other relatives, after a moment of hesitation, followed him out like a receding tide. There were whispers, clicks of the tongue, and someone even took out a phone to sneak a picture. Eleanor stood in the middle of the living room, watching them disappear one by one. She tried to open her mouth, but her throat was so tight that not even a croak came out. As the last person left, they turned and gave Eleanor one final look. It wasn't pity in their eyes. It was a strange sort of satisfaction, a look that said, "You finally got what you deserved." The cold gaze of someone witnessing karma in action. Click, the front door shut. Only Eleanor and Kevin were left in the living room. The air was heavy, and an unspeakable sense of defeat pressed down on the house. From the kitchen, the refrigerator gurgled as the last of the ice melted and dripped to the bottom. Eleanor slowly turned her head to look at Kevin. The panic from moments ago was gone, replaced by a dark, simmering hatred. "Call her," she said, biting off each word. "Tell that bitch to get back here. Now." With a trembling hand, Kevin pulled out his phone and dialed Emily's number. A mechanical voice filled the empty, mocking silence of the living room. "The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again." Emily's phone remained off. She was sitting on a chair in the hospital corridor, staring at the ICU window. The scene behind the glass seemed to shimmer slightly. Her eyes were dry from being awake all night. Her mother hadn't woken up yet. The doctor said this was common. After a hemorrhage surgery, a patient could remain unconscious for days, sometimes even weeks, but Emily still got up every 10 minutes to check. Her mother lay in bed, surrounded by a forest of tubes and machines. Her complexion was still gray, her eyes were shut tight, and only the mechanical ventilator rose and fell with a steady rhythm. Emily gently placed her palm against the cold glass. The glass was cool to the touch. The chill of autumn was already seeping into the city. Suddenly, she remembered her childhood, the days she would walk to the market holding her mother's hand. Back then, her mother's hand was big and warm, and it would envelop Emily's small hand completely. "Are you cold?" "No." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, Mom. I'm not cold at all when I'm holding your hand. How many years ago was that? 20? 25? The memory was hazy. All she could recall was the warmth of her mother's hand. But the hand lying on the hospital bed now was thin and dry, an IV needle stuck in the back of it, blue veins standing out against the pale skin. The slackened skin could no longer hold Emily's hand. "Emily Davis, family of the patient?" Someone called from behind her. Emily turned to see a young woman in blue scrubs. Her name tag read, "Susan Miller." "You're the guardian for the patient in ICU bed 7, correct?" "Yes, that's me. Dr. Evans would like to see you. He wants to discuss the future treatment plan." Emily nodded. She followed the nurse down a long hallway. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the empty corridor, mingling with the low hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. At the end of the hall was a door with a plaque that read, "Dr. Robert Evans, Neurosurgery." Emily knocked. "Come in." She opened the door and entered. Dr. Evans was sitting behind a desk, piled high with medical charts. He looked up at Emily and gestured to the chair opposite him. "Please, have a seat." Emily sat down, her hands, resting on her lap, anxiously clasped and unclasped. "Doctor." Evans flipped through her mother's chart, silent for a moment before he spoke. "As I mentioned yesterday, his tone was professional and detached. The extent of your mother's hemorrhage was quite severe. While the surgery successfully removed the hematoma, the damage to the brain tissue was unavoidable." Emily nodded silently. "The key question now is when, or if, she will regain consciousness," Dr. Evans continued. "If we see signs of spontaneous recovery within the next 48 hours, there's a chance for rehabilitation. However, if 72 hours pass with no response," he paused, "you will need to start preparing for long-term care." Emily's heart sank. "Long-term care? What does that mean?" "It means there's a high probability she will remain in a persistent vegetative state, Doctor," Evans said, looking directly into Emily's eyes. "She will require machines to sustain her vital functions. Her position will need to be changed regularly to prevent bed sores, and she will require daily physical therapy. You will also need to hire a professional caregiver." He listed the specific costs and care items. Each number felt like a giant boulder crushing her chest. "For now, waiting is the best we can do, Doctor," Evans concluded. But you, as the guardian, also need to consider the financial aspect. The cost for the ICU is roughly $1,500 per day. It will be less once we move her to a regular room, but with a caregiver, you should still expect around $800 a day. And that's not including future rehabilitation costs. Emily's mind went blank. $1,500 a day. That was $45,000 a month. How much did she have in her savings account? The pocket money her mother had given her every month for 5 years, plus the money her mother had gifted her just in case of an emergency, totaled about $120,000. It sounded like a lot, but at the ICU rate, it would barely last 2.5 months. Miss Davis? Dr. Evans's voice pulled her back to reality. Are you all right? Yes, I'm fine. Emily took a deep breath. I'll need to make some arrangements. I'll take care of the financial matters. Very well. If you have any questions, you can always ask the nurses at the station. Emily stood up, bowed her head slightly, and left the office. The hallway was still deserted, and the smell of antiseptic stung her nostrils. She found a secluded corner, leaned her back against the wall, and slid down to the floor. It felt like a massive mountain was pressing down on her shoulders. A mountain called reality. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out and checked the screen. It was a text message from her bank. Your credit card ending in 3,592 was canceled today, November 22nd, at 9:42 a.m. at your request. If this was not you, please contact customer service immediately. Emily stared at the screen, dumbfounded. She hadn't canceled her card. She had deactivated the authorized user cards and stopped the auto payments, but that was it. What was this message about? She quickly launched her banking app and tried to log in. The loading screen spun for a few seconds before a red warning box popped up. Your accounts have been temporarily frozen due to a report of suspicious activity. Please visit your nearest branch with a valid ID for verification. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She closed the app and opened the app for her other bank. The same warning message. Account frozen. A third bank, a fourth, all the same. Every single one of her accounts was locked. Emily's hands started to shake. Kevin's text message came back to her. Mom is furious. You need to come back and apologize. And the silence from both her mother-in-law and Kevin after she had sent that final message to the group chat. What had they done? Emily shot up and hurried toward the elevator. She had to get to the bank. She had to find out what was going on. Her mother's hospital bills couldn't be a single cent short. The bank lobby was freezing, the air conditioning cranked up to full blast. Emily took a number and sat down on a plastic chair. 23 people ahead of her. The display showed number A37. Her ticket was K60. She waited for 40 minutes. Finally, her number was called. Hello, how can I help you today? The teller asked, her voice carrying the practiced friendliness of someone who had repeated the line thousands of times. My accounts have been frozen, Emily said, sliding her ID and a bank book across the counter. I'd like to know why. The teller took the ID and typed a few things into her keyboard. Her expression suddenly hardened. Miss Emily Davis? Yes, that's me. Could you please wait just a moment? The teller stood up and disappeared into an office behind her. A few moments later, she returned with a middle-aged man in a suit. His name tag read, Mark Taylor, Branch Manager. Miss Davis, would you please follow me to the conference room? Emily followed him into a small room with a round table and a few chairs. A bank poster with a smiling model hung on the wall. Please, have a seat. Emily sat down. Mr. Taylor sat opposite her, his face a mask of professional solemnity. Miss Davis, regarding the reason your accounts were frozen, a report was filed by a member of your family. A report? Emily asked. Yes. Your husband, Mr. Kevin Davis, filed a police report this morning. He claims that you fraudulently used his credit card and intentionally canceled household utility payments, causing a power and water outage, which resulted in significant financial loss and emotional distress. Emily's mind went completely white. Fraud? Her voice trembled. That card is in my name. It's my card. He was just an authorized user. We have confirmed that part, Mr. Taylor nodded. However, Mr. Davis claims that the card was originally issued based on his credit and financial backing, and that he is the de facto owner. He says he simply entrusted it to his wife. "My credit card was issued on my own credit." Emily's voice rose. "I submitted my proof of employment and income statements. It was all based on my credit score." Mr. Taylor's expression remained unchanged. "Miss Davis, I understand you're upset, but once a police investigation has begun, it is standard procedure to freeze all related accounts until the facts are clarified. We are simply following protocol." Emily gripped the arms of her chair. She thought of her mother lying in the ICU. She thought of the $1,500 daily hospital bill. She thought of the $120,000 in that account, the money her mother had saved her entire life, scrimping and saving for her daughter. And now, all of it was tied up. "My mother is in the intensive care unit right now." Emily's voice shook. "I need that money for her bills, and you're telling me I can't access a single penny?" Mr. Taylor's gaze flickered for a moment, but it quickly returned to the cold, professional stare of a banker. "I'm very sorry for your situation, but the bank cannot unilaterally unfreeze the accounts. You will have to go to the police station, provide your statement, and prove your innocence. Once your name is cleared, the freeze will be lifted immediately. How long will that take?" "It depends on the speed of the investigation. It could be a few days, or if it gets complicated, it could take several weeks." "Several weeks?" Emily squeezed her eyes shut. Her mother didn't have several weeks. It was already dark when she left the bank. The neon signs of the city were beginning to light up. It was a holiday weekend, so most shops were closed, with only convenience stores and a few restaurants casting a lonely glow. Emily stood in front of the bank, feeling as if her legs were made of lead. She didn't know what to do. Her mother's hospital bills, her own living expenses, the frozen accounts, her husband's police report, everything was a tangled mess, choking the air from her lungs. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out. It was a text from an unknown number. "Is this Miss Emily Davis?" "This is Detective Miller with the NYPD 112th Precinct. We need you to come in for questioning regarding a report of credit card fraud filed by your husband, Kevin Davis. Please report to the station tomorrow at 10 a.m. If you have any questions, please contact me at this number." Emily stared at the message for a long time. Then, a strange, twisted smile spread across her face. It was a bizarre smile, devoid of warmth or emotion, just a mechanical movement of muscles. She opened her photo gallery and found a picture she had taken just before leaving her in-laws' house, a photo of the wedding picture hanging on their living room wall. She and Kevin, in a tuxedo and a wedding dress, were smiling brightly. Looking at it now, that smile seemed utterly grotesque. She closed the gallery and opened a notepad app. She began to type, "Divorce Settlement Agreement Party. A. Kevin Davis Party. B. Emily Davis. Both parties mutually agree to dissolve the marital relationship. Division of assets. Party B waives all claims to any and all marital assets acquired during the marriage, including the apartment, vehicles, and savings accounts. Assumption of debt. All debts under Party A's name shall be the sole responsibility of Party A and shall not be transferred to Party B." She wrote out each clause. It felt like her fingertips were making sharp, clicking sounds against the screen. She had written this agreement in her mind 1,000 times over. From the first time her mother-in-law had called her a barren hen. From the time the following year when she saw Kevin laughing and texting with another woman. From the third year when she found out the household money was actually coming from her own mother's pocket. From the fourth year when she realized she was being treated as nothing more than a free maid and an ATM. And from yesterday when she was slapped by her mother-in-law while her husband just stood there and watched. She had always dreamed of divorce. She just never had the courage. But now she did, in a way she had never expected. After finishing the agreement, she opened a legal services app and booked a consultation with a lawyer for the next afternoon. After doing this, the tightness in her chest seemed to ease a little. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message on a messaging app. The sender was Sarah, a woman from Kevin's office she had met once at a company picnic. "Emily, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I think you should know. Kevin and our manager, Miss Roberts, I don't think they're just colleagues. I saw them sharing a room on a business trip last month. Emily read the message without any change in her expression. She already knew. Kevin never even bothered to lock his phone, and she had seen their disgusting conversations more than once. She had just pretended not to know, because her mother-in-law had said, "Men need to blow off steam sometimes. As long as he comes home at night, that's all that matters." Because Kevin had said, "Don't misunderstand. We're just close because of work." Because she had hypnotized herself. Just endure it, for the sake of the family. If I just endure it, it will all pass. But what had she gained by enduring? A family that wouldn't even let her go to the hospital when her mother collapsed at a market. A husband who froze her bank accounts so she couldn't even pay for her mother's surgery. A reality where she was being investigated by the police as a credit card thief. She had endured for 5 years. And this was her reward. Emily put her phone in her pocket and started walking toward the subway station. She had to get back to the hospital. Her mother was waiting. The next morning, 10 a.m., at the NYPD 112th Precinct. Emily sat in a chair in an interrogation room. Across from her sat Detective Miller, a man in his mid-30s. He was dressed in plain clothes and had an unremarkable face. On his desk were a pile of documents and a paper cup of coffee. "Miss Davis, could you please recount for me again the circumstances under which this credit card was issued? I applied for it in March of 2019 at Chase Bank. At the time, I was working in the accounting department of a trading company, and my monthly salary was $2,800. I provided my proof of employment and income, and the card was issued in my name, based on my credit. Later, I added my husband and mother-in-law as authorized users." Detective Miller nodded, writing something down on a form. "So why did you suddenly deactivate their cards and cancel the automatic payments?" Emily looked the detective straight in the eye. "Because my mother-in-law tried to stop me from going to see my dying mother. Because while my mother was on the verge of death, the man who calls himself my husband was only worried about whether his Thanksgiving catering would arrive on time. Because while my mother-in-law was slapping me across the face, my husband just stood there and watched." Her voice was calm, almost detached, as if she were telling someone else's story. Detective Miller's pen stopped. "Your mother-in-law assaulted you?" "Yes," Emily pointed to her cheek. "Right here, the night before last. The bruise has faded a bit, but you can still see the mark." The detective leaned forward to get a closer look. On her cheekbone, there was a faint, purplish bruise and a clear, scabbed-over cut near the corner of her mouth. "Did you file a report?" "No." "At the time, all I could think about was getting to the hospital to see my mother." Detective Miller was silent for a moment. "Miss Davis," his tone softened considerably, "your husband has accused you of credit card fraud. However, our check with the bank confirms that the card is unequivocally in your name and you have full authority over it. Legally speaking, deactivating authorized user cards or canceling automatic payments does not constitute a crime." Emily nodded. "However," the detective continued, "your husband is also claiming that you acted out of malice to intentionally cause a power outage, ruined the family's Thanksgiving, and publicly humiliated them in front of relatives. He is demanding compensation for emotional distress." At the phrase emotional distress, Emily let out a short, bitter laugh. It was so absurd. "Emotional distress?" she repeated. "My mother is in the ICU fighting for her life. Those people physically stopped me from going to the hospital and even assaulted me. And now they're demanding I compensate them for emotional distress?" Detective Miller looked uncomfortable. "I understand how you feel, but since the complainant has made this claim, it has to be noted in the report. Of course, whether it holds up is for a court to decide." Emily took a deep breath. "Then I'd like to file a complaint as well." "A complaint?" "Yes. I'm pressing charges for domestic assault. My mother-in-law hit me, and my husband stood by and did nothing. I have a witness, my aunt. I was on the phone with her on my way to the hospital and explained the whole situation. And," Emily added, "I'm also suing my husband for adultery. I have evidence for that too. Testimony from a coworker and screenshots of the text messages between him and the woman. I saved them on my phone and never deleted them." Detective Miller's pen stopped again. He looked at the woman in front of him. Her face was pale, and she had dark circles under her eyes, looking like she hadn't slept in days. But her gaze was as steady and unshakable as a calm lake. "Miss Davis, are you sure you want to proceed with this?" he asked. Emily met his gaze. "Yes, this could make things quite complicated. Your husband's side isn't likely to take this lying down." "I don't care," Emily cut him off. "I have nothing left to lose." Detective Miller was silent for a moment. He lowered his head and quickly scribbled something on the form. "All right, I'll help you file the complaint. We'll move to the next room to take your official statement, and you can submit the evidence you mentioned." Emily nodded and stood up. At the door, she paused. "Detective," she asked without turning around, "how long will it take for my husband's case against me to be dismissed? The facts are pretty clear. It should be resolved within a week. And when will my accounts be unfrozen? As soon as you're cleared, we'll notify the bank, and they'll be released immediately." "Thank you." Emily opened the door and walked out. The fluorescent lights in the hallway were still pale and cold. After a few steps, she felt a wave of dizziness. She braced herself against the wall and slowly slid to the floor. She hadn't slept in over 30 hours. Rushing from her in-laws' house, spending the night at the hospital, hearing the news about her frozen accounts at the bank and now the police station. She was exhausted, truly exhausted. But she couldn't collapse. Her mother was waiting. She grit her teeth, pushed herself up using the wall, and started walking again, one foot in front of the other. A week later, Emily's accounts were unfrozen. The police investigation concluded that her actions did not constitute a crime. The credit card was legally her own, and she had every right to manage it as she saw fit. Kevin's complaint was dismissed, and he even received a warning for filing a false report. But Emily had no time to feel relieved. Her mother still hadn't woken up. 48 hours passed, then 72, then a full week. Her mother remained with her eyes shut tight, her face ashen, breathing only with the help of a ventilator. Dr. Evans confirmed that she was now considered to be in a persistent vegetative state. Her brainstem is functional, so she can breathe on her own, but the damage to her cerebral cortex is too severe. The chances of her regaining consciousness are slim. The doctor's voice was flat. "We can move her to a regular room for long-term care, or," he trailed off, but Emily knew what he was leaving unsaid, "or you can choose to withdraw life support." Emily stood in front of the ICU window, looking at her mother. Her mother's head had been shaved for the surgery, and a long surgical scar snaked across her scalp like a centipede. She had lost so much weight that her cheekbones protruded sharply, and her eyelids were sunken. "Is this really my mother?" The mother who used to haggle over a few cents for a bundle of spinach at the market. The mother who would show up with bags full of food every time she visited. The mother who would secretly slip a wad of cash into her daughter's pocket. Emily pressed her palm against the glass. "Mom, please, open your eyes." Her voice was as brittle as a dry leaf. "Mom, if you wake up, I'll take you to that little diner you love, the one with the clam chowder. You always said their broth was the best. Just wake up. I'll take you every day." Behind the glass, her mother didn't stir. Only the ventilator made its rhythmic mechanical sound, inflating and deflating her chest. "Mom, please open your eyes. I'm getting a divorce now. You always said you didn't like that family, that I was suffering too much. I listened to you, Mom. I'm getting out. So please, wake up. We can live together, just the two of us. Please." Still no response. Emily's eyes began to burn. As if a dam that had held for years had finally burst, tears streamed down her face. "Mom." Her throat was so tight she couldn't speak. She sank to the floor, buried her face in her hands, and sobbed. It was a cry she had held back for 5 long years. Forgetting all dignity, she wailed like a wounded animal. People walking down the hall glanced at her, but she didn't care. She just wanted to cry. She wanted to vomit up all the sorrow, anger, sadness, and despair of the last 5 years. She cried for a long time, until a nurse came over to ask what was wrong, until her throat was raw and her voice was just a hoarse whisper. She slowly pulled herself up. She wiped her tears. She took out her phone. She opened the Our Family group chat. Since her last message a week ago, no one had said a word. The silence was deafening. Her last words, You can start showing your devotion with your son's money from now on, hung there. She began to type. I've sent the divorce papers to Kevin's email. I don't want any alimony or assets. I have no debts in my name. From now on, you can take care of your own precious family traditions by yourselves. Send. Then she sent a photo. The divorce agreement, signed and dated. Finally, she added one more sentence. My mother is in a vegetative state. I hope you're satisfied now. Don't bother with any hypocritical inquiries about her health. Don't even bother with empty wishes for her recovery. She can't hear you anyway. Send. Then she pressed the Leave Chat button. The chat room disappeared from her list. Her phone screen went dark. She put it in her pocket and walked toward the elevator. The doors slowly closed. Emily leaned her head against the elevator wall and closed her eyes. Her mother might never wake up again, but she had. She had finally, completely, woken up from a terrible 5-year nightmare. 3 months later, the winter wind in Queens was as sharp as a knife. Emily stood in front of the courthouse, wearing a gray puffer jacket. Her mother had bought it for her 2 years ago at a discount store. It's not fancy, but it's incredibly warm, she had said. At the time, Emily had thought it was tacky and rarely wore it. Now, it felt warmer than any other coat in the world. The court's decision had just been handed down. The divorce was finalized. Since Emily had waived her claim to any assets, it was straightforward. The court ruled that Kevin's $50,000 credit card debt was his sole responsibility and had nothing to do with Emily. Furthermore, the evidence of domestic assault Emily had submitted was accepted. While Eleanor did not face criminal charges, it was her first offense, and the injury was deemed minor. The court acknowledged the emotional distress Emily had suffered and ordered Kevin and Eleanor to pay her $5,000 in damages. Kevin's affair was also substantiated by clear evidence, resulting in an additional $10,000 in damages, a total of $15,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it wasn't nothing either. It was enough to cover a few months' rent and her mother's caregiver bills. Emily left the courthouse and walked out into the winter street. The trees lining the sidewalk were bare, their skeletal branches reaching toward the gray sky. She remembered that day 3 months ago, in the fall, when the air was thick with the smell of roasting nuts, the pale lights in her in-laws' hallway, the blood on her lip. It all felt like something from a past life. Her mother was now in a long-term care facility. It wasn't luxurious, but it was affordable and specialized in caring for patients in vegetative states. Emily visited twice a week, gave her mother sponge baths, read books to her, and chattered away about her week. Her mother never responded, but Emily didn't mind. She was now living in a basement apartment on the outskirts of Queens. It was a tiny room, barely 200 square feet. Sunlight barely trickled in for an hour a day, and when it rained, the walls smelled of mildew. But it was entirely her own space. No one called her a useless, barren woman. No one slapped her for wanting to go see her sick mother. No one sat idly by playing games on their phone while she fell apart. It was freedom. And though the price had been steep, her mother was in a vegetative state. She was a divorcee, and her bank account was dwindling. She felt she could breathe more easily now than at any point in the last 5 years. Emily swiped her Metro card at the turnstile. The subway car was crowded. She grabbed a handrail and stood. The train rattled, and the darkness of the tunnel flashed past the window. She looked down at her phone. She had long since left the family group chat, blocked Kevin's number, and blocked Eleanor's number too. But today, a text had come through from an unknown number. Miss Davis, this is the legal representative for the Davis family. Mr. Kevin Davis would like to request a private mediation regarding some post-divorce matters. Emily skimmed the message and immediately hit delete. She wanted nothing more to do with those people. The subway stopped. She climbed the stairs and walked out into the cold winter air. A thin layer of snow covered the entrance to her basement apartment. She unlocked the door and stepped into her small, dark, but personal sanctuary. She took off her jacket, boiled some water, and made a cup of instant coffee, black, no sugar. She took the mug and stood by the window. The window was at ground level, so she could only see the feet of people passing by outside. Dress shoes, sneakers, high heels, winter boots. Countless feet hurried past. Emily looked at the feet and let out a small laugh, not a bitter laugh or a scornful one, just a light, simple laugh. She thought back to her life with her in-laws. Waking up at 5 a.m. to prepare breakfast, only getting to eat after her mother-in-law and husband had finished. Dishes, cleaning, laundry, ironing, organizing the refrigerator. Her workday usually ended around 10 p.m. Back then, she thought she would live like that forever. Trapped in that house, in the prison of being a daughter-in-law, brainwashed into believing she had to protect the family until she grew old and died. But now, she was free. Even though she was drinking instant coffee in a basement apartment, she could sleep in if she wanted, eat what she wanted, watch a movie at 2 a.m., and spend the entire weekend in bed without anyone saying a word. This was freedom. This was the taste of the air she had so desperately craved for the last 5 years. Emily put down her coffee mug and picked up her phone. She opened a job search app. She needed to find work. She had to pay her mother's bills, pay her rent, and most importantly, she had to live. She typed accountant, Queens, full-time into the search bar and hit enter. A long list of job postings appeared on the screen. She began to read through them, one by one, carefully. Outside, the snow was starting to fall heavily. The footsteps of the people outside quickened. Emily didn't look up. She just sat there quietly, focused on designing her future on the small screen of her phone. Thanksgiving came around again. Emily walked down the hallway of the nursing home, carrying 2 bags of fruit and a box of pastries. The hallway still had that strange, mingled scent of antiseptic and old age. She knocked on the door to her mother's room. "Come in," a caregiver's voice called out. Emily opened the door. Her mother was still lying in bed. A year had passed, but her condition was unchanged. The closed eyes, the feeding tube, the expressionless face. But Emily was used to it now. She placed the fruit and pastries on the bedside table and sat down in the chair next to the bed. "Hi, Mom. It's me." She took her mother's hand. It was thin and bony, but still warm. "Mom, it's Thanksgiving today. I brought you your favorite pumpkin pie. The caregiver said you can't eat it, but I thought you could at least smell it." She opened the box and held a small slice of pie near her mother's nose. The sweet, spicy scent of cinnamon filled the air. "Mom, I'm doing okay these days. I got a job. It's in the accounting department of a trading company. The pay isn't great, but it's a good place to work. The people are nice, and no one tells me what to do." She paused for a moment, then continued, "And Mom, I made a friend. She's a temp at the office. Her name is Sarah. She's 5 years younger than me, but she's so bright and laughs all the time. She says, I live too quietly and is always trying to drag me out for drinks, or to the movies, or to go on a blind date. It's crazy." Emily chuckled. "I haven't gone on any dates. I told Sarah it's only been a year since my divorce, and I'm not ready to meet anyone yet. She said that's fine. She'll wait for me." She looked at her mother's face. "I think you'd really like Sarah if you woke up. She grew up in a single-parent home too, so she's always saying how jealous she is that I have a mom." Just then, her mother's eyelid twitched. Emily froze. She held her breath and stared intently at her mother's face. A few seconds passed, but there was no further movement. "I must have imagined it." Emily let out a small sigh. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. The room was quiet, with only the rhythmic hiss of the life support machine. "I'm not giving up, Mom," she whispered, as if to herself. "No matter how long it takes, I'll keep coming." That night, Emily had a dream that her mother woke up. Her mother sat up in bed, smiling brightly, and said, "My dear, I'm craving some clam chowder." Emily cried and replied, "Okay, let's go. I'll buy you some." The two of them left the hospital and walked down a sun-drenched street. The sidewalks were lined with trees, and golden autumn leaves rained down like light. Her mother held her hand tightly, just like when she was a child. "Are you cold?" "No." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, Mom." "I'm not cold at all when I'm holding your hand." When she woke up, her pillow was damp with tears. Emily stared up at the dark ceiling of her basement apartment for a long time. It was still before dawn. She got up, washed her face, brushed her teeth, and put on the gray puffer jacket. It was a weekday. She had to go to work. Life had to go on. 5 years later, Emily was a manager at that trading company. She even had her own small office with a south-facing window. It was a place filled with sunlight. She had moved out of the basement apartment and into a proper one. It was a small one-bedroom, but when she opened the window, she could see the sky. Her mother still hadn't woken up, but the doctor said her vital signs were very stable, and she would likely hold on for a long time. Emily still visited her twice a week. She didn't read the newspaper to her anymore. The world's news was too depressing. Instead, she started reading novels. Light, warm stories with happy endings. "Mom, this is the last chapter of the book. The main characters finally got together. They opened a cafe by the sea and watched the sunrise every day." Emily read the last sentence and closed the book. "When you wake up, should we go see the ocean? We could rent a place on the coast for a month and just do nothing but watch the waves." She looked at her mother's face. There was no response, but Emily had learned to let go of expectation. She just wanted to talk. She just wanted to tell her, "I'm always here. I'm right here by your side, Mom." Thanksgiving came around once more. As usual, Emily bought fruit and pastries and headed to the nursing home. She knocked on the door to the room. There was no sound from within. Puzzled, Emily opened the door. The room was empty. Her mother was gone from the bed, and the machines that were always humming were all gone. Her heart stopped. She ran out of the room and sprinted to the nurse's station. "Excuse me, the patient in room 306, where is she?" A nurse looked up at her. The moment Emily saw the look in her eyes, a cold dread washed over her. "Ma'am," the nurse's voice was low, "the patient passed away early this morning." Emily stood there, stunned. Her mind went blank. What? Around 3 a.m., she went into sudden cardiac arrest. "We performed CPR for over 30 minutes, but we couldn't bring her back. Her legs gave out." Emily grabbed the counter for support and slid to the floor. "How?" The nurse came around the counter and put a hand on her shoulder. "Try to be strong." She went peacefully. She was asleep, without any pain. Emily couldn't hear a thing. She just sat on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Her mother was gone. The mother who had collapsed in a market 6 years ago that Autumn had, on another autumn day 6 years later, left forever. She hadn't even gotten to see her one last time. Emily cried out loud. It was the second time she had wailed like that in 6 years. The first was when her mother had entered a vegetative state. This time was because her mother had left her side for good. The funeral was small. Emily did not notify anyone from the Davis family. The only people who came were her aunt's family, some of her mother's old co-workers, and her friend, Sarah. Sarah stayed by Emily's side the entire time, silently handing her tissues, bringing her water, and making sure she ate. Emily stood before the crematorium, holding her mother's portrait. The photo was from her mother's 60th birthday. Her hair hadn't been completely gray then, and her wrinkles weren't as deep. In the photo, her mother was smiling gently, a smile that showed the traces of a hard life, but was endlessly kind. "Rest in peace now, Mom." Emily's voice was cracked and raw from crying. "You worked so hard your whole life. You worried so much because of me. You can forget everything now and just rest." She watched as the attendant slid the portrait into the opening of the furnace. Flames roared to life. Her mother's smile in the photograph disappeared into the fire, turning to ash. Emily stared blankly at the roaring flames, the warm hand that held hers on the way to the market, the way she would wave from the school gate when she came to pick her up, the way she slipped an envelope into her pocket on her wedding day, saying a woman needed her own money, and her last image, 6 years ago, laden with bags, turning away and saying, "I'll come again soon." That was the last time she had heard her mother's voice. Emily closed her eyes. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks. "Mom, in your next life, don't live such a hard life," she whispered. "In your next life, I'll be your mother. I'll protect you." A month later, while cleaning out her mother's belongings, Emily found an old envelope. Inside was a bank book and a letter. The bank book was in her mother's name. The balance read, $320,000. Emily held her breath. This much money? How had her mother, a simple factory worker with a meager retirement fund, managed to save such a large sum? With trembling hands, Emily unfolded the letter. It was her mother's handwriting. Her cursive was unsteady, and some words were blurred, as if by tears. My Emily, by the time you read this, I'll probably be gone. This money is what I saved my whole life. The money I earned working night shifts at the factory, the extra cash from side jobs, the little bit of inheritance your father left me, and my retirement savings, I put it all together. I know, my dear. I know how much you suffered in that house. Every time I visited you, it felt like my heart was being torn apart. But I also know your personality. I knew you'd only feel worse if I said anything, so I just watched. The only thing I could do was save money. I saved it so that if you ever felt like you couldn't take it anymore and wanted to run, you wouldn't hesitate because you had no money, so you wouldn't have to endure because you had nowhere to go. I saved every penny so I could be the ground beneath your feet. Emily, your mother isn't educated and doesn't have much, so this is all I can leave you. Please, don't live like me. Live with your head held high. Don't endure so much. Don't let other people wear you down. You are the most precious daughter in the world to me. Live like you are precious. I love you, my daughter. By the time Emily finished reading, her hands were shaking like a leaf. Teardrops fell onto the page, smudging the ink. She clutched the letter to her chest and curled up on the floor. A gut-wrenching sob escaped her. Her mother had known everything. That she was being treated like a maid. That she was bottling everything up and getting sick inside. That one day she would reach her breaking point and collapse. And so, her mother had quietly saved money to build a foundation for her daughter to stand on when she finally escaped. She had spent her whole life preparing for it. Emily cried for a long, long time until her voice gave out. Then, she slowly got up and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of the city spread out before her. Countless lights twinkled like stars, and the headlights of cars flowed like a river. She took out her phone and checked the date. October 17th. It was her mother's birthday. "Happy birthday, Mom," she whispered softly. "Thank you, Mom,"